We're so excited about this. We're going to be continuing on the theme and the message of volunteering and getting out there, because that's what we're talking about, because that's what we're trying to do this year. It's what it's all about. So if you haven't listened to the other vision messages, please check them out. And you guys can get on board with us and have the reasons why. Now, I'm going to open up with story time because I like stories. So follow along. I'm going to read it. It's going to be great. All right? So we're going to follow along the story. Just follow along. One night, a cobbler, because those are common. One night, a cobbler dreamed that the next day Jesus was coming to visit him. The dream seemed so real that he got up the very early next morning and hurried into the woods, because he was by the woods, where he gathered green boughs. I think that's like sticks. Green boughs to decorate his shop for the arrival of such a guest. He waited all morning, but to his disappointment, his shop remained quiet, except for an old man who limped up to the door, asking to come in for a few minutes of warmth. While the man was resting, the cobbler noticed that the old fellow's shoes were worn through. Touched, the cobbler took a new pair from his shelves and saw to it that the stranger was wearing them as he went on his way. Throughout the afternoon, the cobbler still waited, but his only visitor after that was an elderly woman. He had seen her struggling under a heavy load of firewood, and so he invited her in too, into the shop to eat. He saw to it that she had a good meal before she went on her way. And as night began to fall, the cobbler heard a child crying outside his door. The child was lost and afraid, and so the cobbler went out, soothed the young kid's tears, and with a little hand to his, he took the child home. When he returned, the cobbler was sad, though. He was convinced that while he had been away, he had missed the visit of his Lord. In his sadness, the cobbler cried out, "Why is it, Lord, that your feet delay? Have you forgotten that this was the day?" Oh, that rhymed. Then, soft in the silence voice he heard, "Lift up your heart, for I kept my word. 3 times I came to your friendly door. 3 times my shadow was on your floor. I was the man with the bruised feet. I was the woman you gave food to, and I was the child on the street." I really like that story. You know, it's a really touching story, and something we don't really think about or consider when we think about Jesus and going to, encounter Jesus, and I want his presence, and I want to meet with Jesus, but we never really consider the fact that meeting with Jesus could be the poor person on the street, could be the orphan kid, could be all these people in needs. And just like the man, we can get so ready and prepare ourselves to meet Jesus that we miss him when he walks by on the street. And we don't want to do that. We want to be prepared to meet Jesus. And so that's what we're talking about. When Jesus is saying, what you do for them, you do for me. And I was that hungry person. I was that person in need. What you did for them, you'll do for me. Now, we can see this in the Bible, too, in Matthew 26. We see this, and I'm going to read, it's again another story. We have a few stories tonight. In Matthew 26, it says this: "Meanwhile, Jesus was in Bethany at the home of Simon, a man who had previously had leprosy. And while he was eating, a woman came in with a beautiful alabaster jar of expensive perfume and poured it over his head. The disciples were indignant when they saw this. 'What a waste,' they said. 'It could have been sold for a high price and the money given to the poor.' But Jesus, aware of this, replied, 'Why criticize this woman for doing such a good thing to me? You will always have the poor among you, but you will not always have me.'" I'm going to repeat that. "You will always have the poor among you, but you will not always have me. She has poured this perfume on me to prepare my body for burial. I tell you the truth, wherever the good news is preached throughout the world, this woman's deed will be remembered and discussed." This is the only deed that Jesus said is going to be remembered and discussed whenever the gospel is preached. You know that? I just want to make a point of that. It wasn't a miracle sign, power, wonder, healing, mass evangelism, crusade, giant church that was opened around the world. It wasn't something that we would consider like, oh yeah, Jesus, he will remember that. What was remembered was serving Jesus. There was nothing supernatural about it. There was nothing special about it in the sense of what we would think of special. Yet this is the only time Jesus says wherever the good news in the gospel is preached, her story will go out too. I don't know about you, but I want my life to be tagged along with, oh yeah, and John's story, and this story, and this story. And we think, okay, I'm going to serve God, I'm going to do these grand things, when the reality is the thing that stuck out to him the most in all of his time going around and doing ministry, this one woman's kind deed to him, putting perfume, was what stuck out to him the most, and he remembered it the most. That is a really encouraging idea, okay? So keep that in your head. Now, let's talk about this a little bit. The other translations label this perfume as spikenard. Now, I'm not making this up. It's called spikenard. No one's ever heard of spikenard, but boy, when I encountered it, I liked it. There's other translations that call it pure nard. So we're going to be talking about the pure nard tonight. I almost called this message pure nard. So spikenard is symbolized the very best in ancient cultures. So spikenard is like the Tiffany's diamond. You know what I'm saying? It's like, ooh, that's the best of the best. Like he went to Tiffany's or Jared's. You know, and so he's like, that's a Tiffany's diamond. That perfume is the equivalent of what we would say is like the Tiffany's. It's the highest quality. It's the best of the best. It's spikenard. It was the absolute best that you could get. All right? And it was really, really expensive. They estimate it's about a year's salary for a person, just on a perfume bottle. A year's salary on a person. That's expensive. And this is a woman back then. She's not making a ton of money. So we see the cost is even more significant. A lot of people assumed it's what she had. It was her inheritance. It was maybe her dowry money that was going to help. This was a big deal that she's poured spikenard on Jesus' feet and head, okay? This is a serious deal. This was super significant too. You know, actually in Song of Solomon, I don't have the verse up here, but in Song of Solomon, this is what it says. While the king was at his table, my perfume spread its fragrance. You know, this kind of implies that among all the fragrances in the room, it was the spikenard that got to his nose. You know, it was my perfume in the Song of Solomon. It was her perfume. It didn't matter who was in there, right? It was her perfume that got to his nose. And he could differentiate. It was that smell. It was that quality, that, man, I recognize that smell. That's what sticks with me. You know, and that's the same kind of perfume that they're talking about in Song of Solomon. It was that spikenard. So this was very significant when she does this. Mary was giving Jesus her best. And he was showing her love in the highest quality possible. Simply a woman with perfume touched the Lord more than any of the Pharisees or religious people that fasted all day, read the Bibles all day. A woman with perfume touched Jesus in such a way that he says, I'm never going to forget this girl, and nobody will either. That's incredible. A woman perfume, guess what? You don't need a lot. You don't need a lot to impress Jesus. You don't need a lot to make him remember you, to make him think of you, your deeds, what you do in life to have value. You don't need a lot. And now the disciples knew that this was really valuable because as we read in the story, they're like, what are you doing? That's super expensive. And it said, you should be selling that and giving that to the poor. Right? Just like that's worth a lot of money. You know how much you could give? If you really loved and wanted to serve Jesus, you would sell that and give it to the poor. And that's what they told him. And Jesus came back and said, listen, you'll always have the poor, but you won't always have me. And then he called what she did a good thing, which probably was really weird to the disciples. Right? What are you talking about? It's a good thing. That's just going on your feet. We could have gotten so much money. But in essence, Jesus is saying that they were expected, the disciples, they were being expected to give the same kind of devotion to the poor in need when he was gone that she was giving to him right there. Think about that. That's what he's saying. He's saying you're always going to have the poor to give this sort of devotion to, but I'm right here. In other words, he's saying this is equal. This is the same. If it was better, he would have said, yes, you know what, Mary, that's nice, but let's just give that to the poor and sell it for money because they need it. No. He's making a statement here that he's saying by giving to me in this sort of devotion, he's like, the poor will always be here, so you give it to me now. In other words, how you treated the poor and those in need is the same as how you treated Jesus. And that's what he was bringing the equivalent to. And this is mirrored. And I say this because just a chapter before in Matthew 25, we read this. Jesus is talking about Judgment Day, okay? And this is the king addressing a group of people. In Matthew 25, verse 34, then it says, then the king will say to those on his right, come, you who are blessed by my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the creation of the world. For I was hungry, and you fed me. I was thirsty, and you gave me a drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me into your home. I was naked, and you gave me clothing. I was sick, and you cared for me. I was in prison, and you visited me. Then the righteous ones will reply, Lord, when did we ever see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink, or a stranger and show you hospitality, or naked and give you clothing? When did we ever see you sick or in prison or visit you? And the king will say, I tell you the truth. When you did it to one of the least of these, my brothers and sisters, you were doing it to me. You see, he said it just a chapter ago to the disciples. Look, what you do to one of the least of these, what you're doing to the poor and to those in need, you're doing to me. And so when Mary then shows up and gives the money, gives the perfume to Jesus, they're like, you should give that to the poor. And he's like, no. She's giving it to me. What's he saying? It's the same. I'm trying to make a point. It's the same. How you treat me, I expect you to treat the poor. How you care for me. And he looked at her and said, this is the kind of devotion that I'm looking for. She's devoted to me and how she gives her best to me. He says, you'll always have the poor to do this to. So my question is, When the Bible says the poor, it does mean those like poor, homeless, and those in need like that financially. But it also refers to poor in spirit, poor in health, there's poor condition, whatever that may be, those in need. Okay? So when he says the poor, do we treat the poor in such a same condition that we would if Jesus was standing there? That's my question. And that's my question to myself. Do I look at those in need and treat those in need with the same care? I tell you what, if Jesus was in my house and he was going to be in dinner, yeah, I'd sell everything and give him the best gift that I possibly could. I'd be in her boat. I would say, here's the purest nard you've ever smelled, Jesus. Like, I would go and find it, and I would sell everything I had to give it to him. But my question is, even myself, I don't look at the guy down the street with the same way. I just don't. And I don't know about you, but it's like, okay, I just don't think of it that way. But Jesus is saying, look, the poor will always be with you, but I'm here with you right now, so give it to me. In other words, how you treat me, I expect you to treat the poor the same way. I expect the same devotion and quality of care to me that you would give to me sitting at your house that you would give to the poor and those in need. That's what he's saying. How you treat them is how you treat me. Not only that, whatever you do for the poor, whatever you do to the poor, like the king said, what you did to them, you did to me. That's incredible. Like today, you can do things to Jesus. You can give to him. He still equates himself, the poor and those in need. When you do something for the people at the homeless shelter, that's why we're so big on doing this and getting out there and helping people in need. Because we're serving Jesus too. We're giving to him. We're giving to Jesus. And it's so fascinating because like the Song of Solomon said about her perfume, among all the scents, let me tell you, it's the scent that comes from working and giving to the poor and caring to those in need that is the scent that cuts through everything else. It's the one that Jesus remembered. He says, this will always be where the gospel is preached. This is the smell, man. This is the thing that sticks out to me the most. This is the smell that sticks out to me the most. We can do a lot of things through Jesus. We are saved through Jesus. We can be healed through Jesus. We can live through Jesus' power, through Jesus' health, through Jesus' grace, through Jesus. Everything is through Jesus. We do so much through Jesus, and all the teachings, everything is about what we can do through Jesus and because of Jesus, and thank you, Jesus, and through Jesus, and that's true, but do we take time to say, what can I do to Jesus? Or am I so busy what I can do through Jesus that I just pass on through Jesus? Thank you for the blessing. I'm going to walk over here. Thank you for this, Jesus. And instead of taking the time to say, what can I do to Jesus? And he gives us a way to do something for him. You get that? So he doesn't need it. He doesn't need it. Let me just make that clear. He doesn't need it. It's not like he needs our service and he needs our work. No, he doesn't need it. But just like her, it was a sign of devotion and love. Man, I love you like crazy, so let me do it. He doesn't need your perfume today, but he needs your hands, and he needs your feet, and he needs your time, and he needs your free time to go and volunteer and to serve and help people and those in need. If you really want to show how much you love him, man, this is how we pour that perfume on him. It's the same way we do it today. And it's that same scent that can reach him today. It's that same thing that will be remembered for forever today. This is the way we do it. This is the key of how we do this. 1 Corinthians 3:12 says, anyone who builds on that foundation, which is Jesus, may use a variety of materials, gold, silver, jewels, wood, hay, or straw. But on the judgment day, fire will reveal what kind of work each builder has done. The fire will show if a person's work has any value. Man, I always get stuck on that verse. The fire will show if a person's work has any value. If the work survives, that builder will receive a reward. But if the work is burned up, man, the builder will suffer a great loss. The builder will be saved, but like someone barely escaping through a wall of flames. That's one of the most humbling verses you can read. Another translation, the Message says, if your work passes inspection, fine, but if it doesn't, man, your part of the building will be torn out and started over. But you won't be torn out. You'll survive, but just barely. I don't want to be a Christian that just barely gets in. I don't want to be a Christian that just barely gets in. I mean, maybe for you that's okay, but I can't. Like, I don't want to be a Christian that just barely makes it into heaven. And I'm not trying to get people to just barely make it in. I mean, I'll take it. Shoot, I'll take barely getting into heaven. But I want people who come in and they have work. They have something to show. They have some sign of devotion to Jesus that says, yes, you're the one with the perfume in Fort Worth, Texas, at the homeless shelter. You're the one with perfume at Fort Worth, Texas, on the street. You're the one with perfume when the person was sick and you went and cared for them. That's what I want. You're the one with that perfume. You're the one who broke their time, your resources, your values, your money you gave. You're the one who poured perfume on my feet. That's what I want. And let me tell you, this material that lasts and that survives, I want to recommend today, I want to suggest today, try a perfume. Try the perfume that Jesus told us about. Try this perfume that he remembers and he likes. He already told us. Try this way. Try using and building with this material. Man, this is not just getting into heaven. This is, you're the guy, I recognize that smell. No, that sounds, hopefully it's a good smell, but you're the guy, I recognize that smell, man. I recognize you. Be recognized like that. Oh, this is the guy. He covered Fort Worth in that cologne, that smell. He did it, man. Be that kind. Get into heaven like that, not just barely making it in. And so I want to suggest we use that material. We use that spikenard like Mary did for Jesus. This will last, and this will be remembered. And and this is a sign of maturity even. Because let me tell you, the first time Mary saw Jesus, she didn't do that. Right? This isn't the first time we see Mary in the Bible. This is near the end, but right before Jesus dies. This is way near the end, 6 days before he dies. So the first time we see Mary, though, it's with his sister Martha, and Jesus comes in, and Martha invites Jesus to dinner. And so Jesus is in there, and we know the story, right? Martha is busy working, and she is doing all these things and preparing and cleaning and doing all that. And Mary, it says, is sitting, her sister Mary sat at the Lord's feet listening to what he taught. And the sister gets angry. She's like, Jesus? I just love Martha. I really do. Because she comes up to and pulls Jesus aside. I don't know if he was preaching or what, but he's like, Jesus, we need to talk. It's serious. And so they bring him, and it's like, have you seen my sister? She's not working. I'm doing all the dishes, and I'm doing all the chores, Jesus. And she's sitting at your feet, Jesus, and she's just listening to you. I just love the boldness of Martha to stop Jesus and say, my sister. And then she even says, can you tell her to work? Like, tell her, Jesus. I can't imagine how many prayers are going up, okay, all day long. Can you tell Sue to be a Christian? Jesus? I'm doing all the work, Jesus, and Sue's just terrible. I can see that going up to Jesus all the time. But what does he say? He says, no, Mary's got it. She's sitting at my feet. Mary's got it. The first time Mary was there, man, she was sitting at Jesus' feet listening to the teaching. She's just absorbing it. She was so busy and absorbed in his teaching that she didn't even get up to move and to work. She was stuck in the teaching. She loved the teaching, okay? And Jesus said, this is great. This is exactly where she's supposed to be. That was the first encounter. The first time she was there, she sat at his feet to listen to him. The next time she was there, she sat at his feet to wash them. Okay? There's a progress that happens. There's a maturing that has to happen in every single believer. It has to be, this is the way she demonstrates it. The first time she's sitting there listening at his feet. The second time she's sitting there washing his feet. What happened? What changed her? No doubt she heard the teachings of Jesus. No doubt she heard and fell in love with him. That the second time she saw that, we can see she grew and she changed and she got it, because the second time she didn't waste the opportunity. She sold everything, man. She gave her best to Jesus and washed his feet. There is a maturity that has to happen. Unfortunately, there's too many Christians today that are stuck sitting at Jesus' feet, and they never get to the washing his feet part, or anybody else's feet for that matter. Because Jesus says, this is what I do for you, I want you to do for other people. He made it really clear. We have too many Christians just sitting at his feet, letting Martha's and everybody else do the work, and we just sit and absorb the teaching. When are we going to finally decide to wash his feet? When does that point switch? And then when she switched to that, that's when he said, this story will be remembered always. That's the perfume that stuck with Jesus. And that's what we need to do. This is the growth and the sign of a mature believer. And like I said, lots of people can get stuck like this. And we have a good example of this, actually. In Luke 7. In Luke 7, we have a good example of this. Here we go. It says, one of the Pharisees asked him over for a meal. He went to the Pharisee's house and sat down at the dinner table. Just then, a woman of the village, the town harlot, hey there, having learned that Jesus was a guest at the home of the Pharisee, came with a bottle of very expensive perfume. Here we go again. And stood at his feet, weeping, raining tears on his feet. Letting down her hair, she dried his feet, kissed them, and anointed them with the perfume. And when the Pharisee who had invited him over saw this, he said to himself, if this man was really a prophet like I thought he was, he would have known what kind of woman this is who is falling all over him. All right, so this lady had a bad reputation. Like, we're talking, she had a serious reputation. And the Pharisee knew her. Oh, there comes Becky. We all know Becky. Here she comes, and she's got a reputation. It calls her harlot. That's disputed, but she had, either way, a very sinful reputation. She was known around town. She had a really bad reputation. So here she comes in a holy man's house, and she comes in with a perfume, and she starts wiping Jesus' feet and starts pouring perfume on his feet and serving Jesus, doing something to Jesus, just like Mary did. And the Pharisee, the religious guy, said, man, if you knew what kind of woman she actually was, you would not even let her touch you. What's that going to do to your reputation? Oh my God, like she's that bad, you wouldn't even let her touch you. So this is Jesus' response. In the next verse, it says, then turning to the woman, but speaking to Simon, he said, do you see this woman? I came to your home, and you provided no water for my feet, but she rained tears on my feet and dried them with her hair. You gave me no greeting, but from the time I arrived, she hasn't quit kissing my feet. You provided nothing for freshening up, but she has soothed my feet with perfume. Impressive, isn't it? She was forgiven many, many sins, and so she is very, very grateful. If the forgiveness is minimal, the gratitude is minimal. So what does he say? You're criticizing a sinful woman for doing something for me. And he's saying, look, dude, when I got into the house, you didn't even offer me water for my feet. You offered me nothing. You didn't even come and greet me, a kiss on the cheek. And he's saying she's doing all of it. She just wants nothing to do but be hospitable to me, to serve me. She's washing my feet, man. She's greeting me. She's kissing my feet. She's pouring perfume on me. She's giving me everything. But when you, religious guy, who's supposed to do all these things and know better, you didn't even offer me a single thing. And I have to wonder, and my heart breaks, because how often do we just want Jesus over for dinner and don't offer him anything? How many Christians are getting fat on the communion wafers? You know what I'm saying? Without ever doing anything. I'll take another one, Jesus. Oh, another one will be great, Jesus. And we don't even offer him anything. It doesn't even compute most of the time. It doesn't even, this idea of I could do something to Jesus. I know I have to work for Jesus. I know he works through me, but did you know you can do something to Jesus that you could give to him and you can show him love by doing things? Now, there's other ways. It's not just volunteering and serving, but that's what we're talking about tonight. We can't be like the Pharisee man who just invites him over for his company, but we didn't even bother to offer him anything. We didn't even bother to think about it. So this woman who, like it says, the town harlot, let's say she's the town harlot, she was remembered in the scriptures because of her serving to Jesus Christ. She was remembered. With all of her bad past, she wasn't remembered as that. She was remembered as the girl who served Jesus himself. So I don't care what the rest of them did. And he said, he got back in his face, said, I don't care what she's done. Her sins are forgiven. She served me. Do you see how powerful it is? How powerful it is? A woman with perfume, yet again, man, gets Jesus' attention when the Pharisee could not. A woman with perfume. We can't just bring Jesus into our company, into our lives, in our house, when we need to offer something. This is like what we said, Mary just wasn't stuck at his feet listening to teaching the whole time. He finally did something. She finally matured enough to say, you know, Jesus, I'm going to do something to you, for you. I'm going to do something for you. And that's what we need to be. That's where I pray we need to go to. You know, and that's our heart for this church, and that's our heart for the movement, and that's what we're trying to do. We want to show Jesus our devotion and our love. We want to offer him something. We want to do something for him. We want to prove to him, man. We want the city full of that perfume, you know? We want the city coated in that perfume. Everywhere he goes, I love the smell of Fort Worth. I just love walking around there. It smells so good. Why? Because we are doing it, and you can do that today. And maybe maybe you've been someone who likes to sit at the feet of Jesus, just get the teaching and the teaching and the teaching, and maybe the serving's not there. But it's okay. Maybe you got a bad reputation. Maybe you have something like what the lady had. I have a bad reputation. Well, guess what? That can all change. That can all change pretty easily too. And it's not hard. So how do we pour perfume today? Man, it's just like he said, what you do for them and those in need, for the least of these, you do to me. So serve, so volunteer, so help those in need in your life. And there's lots of different ways that can look. And there's lots of people, maybe it's family even. Do whatever it takes, but to serve and love those people. Give it all, okay? She didn't just give, Here's a little spritz, Jesus. She gave the best. She gave the purest of the nard. She gave everything she had. She gave the best quality. Let's live the same way. Let's give the best quality to those in need. Let's treat the people who have needs as if it was Jesus standing there. How would we do it? What would we do, and how would we do differently? Let's not forget this thing. Let's not forget, like we said, to wrap it up, like the cobbler at the beginning. Let's not miss those moments. Let's not miss those opportunities to encounter Jesus on the street, in the shelters, in the homes, in the families, and wherever that may be. And let's not miss our opportunity to be remembered for that perfume moments. Amen?